Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk a little bit about financial aid. My name is Jonathan Gowan. I'm the director of the Tuition Break Program here with the New England Board of Higher Education. But I'm really excited to be quickly turning it over to a great colleague of mine, Julie Shields-Rutina, here with us from the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, otherwise known as MEFA. She'll be leading a really wonderful and helpful presentation for you all regarding financial aid. It's meant to be a baseline understanding, stage setting for you all to understand a little bit about the financial aid process, terminology, timeline, all of those critical elements. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Julie to get us started, and we will be answering some questions at the end. Julie?
Thank you, Jonathan. Happy to be here, and I'll share my presentation. Okay, well, I'll thank you. And my name is Julie Shields-Rutina, and I am currently the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training at MEFA. And I've been working in this field for over 30 years, with families, with students, helping students be able to access and afford college. So I do love to share this information. So happy to be here this evening. And my current organization, MEFA, is a not-for-profit state authority that's been around since 1982, all with the mission of helping families plan, save, and pay for college. And a couple of other things about MEFA, we have private loans for families who need that type of financing when financing a college education. We also have the state's savings plans, the U Plan and the U Fund. And then everything else we do is just free guidance and advice for students, for families at whatever stage you're in the process. So we would just encourage you to reach out to us if you need any assistance. So tonight's webinar about financial aid will be on these topics. So we'll just cover it, the basics from soup to nuts, and all along we will be sharing a number of free resources for you. All right, so we will start with the types and sources of financial aid that are available for students. And really, when we say financial aid, we're thinking about any money that is there to help students pay for college. And usually we can categorize it three ways. So grants and scholarships, which is gift aid that is awarded to the student and does not have to be repaid. So that is clearly the best type of financial aid that you would be looking for and hoping for. But also there are two other categories. One is work, and federal work study is a type of financial aid that is awarded to the students, but they don't receive the money up front, but it allows them to get a job while they're in college, makes it very easy to get a job on different campuses. And usually students use that money to pay for miscellaneous expenses as they're going about their semester. So they can use that for personal expenses, transportation, pizza, that kind of thing. But that can really help bridge that gap of the expenses while they're a student. And third is federal student loans. Now, these are loans, which means they do need to be repaid, but this is still considered financial aid because these loans are unique and have some special benefits, and we'll talk about what those are. And where does all this money come from? Well, it comes from a number of sources. A lot of it comes from the federal government. And you can see the link there to studentaid.gov, which is a wealth of information about all of the federal aid for students. There is a lot of aid through Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts. So also you can see the OSFA, Office of Student Financial Aid here in Massachusetts website. And a lot of aid comes from Massachusetts, and a whole lot of aid also comes from the colleges and universities themselves. So that's important to know. A lot of times people don't realize that. Now, for those three sources, when you apply for financial aid using the process that we're going to talk about right now, you are applying for all the federal, state, and college and university aid. So that's one big process that puts you applying for aid from all of those sources. So that's great. There is one source which is kind of outside of that process that you do on your own outside of that, and that is that there are scholarships from other organizations, private organizations, agencies. It could be anything from a student's high school, maybe a parent's employer, or maybe it could be a big national scholarship like the Coca-Cola Foundation that awards scholarships. And that is a process you sort of do on your own and look for any additional money. So one thing you would do is maybe look what I call closer to home and talk to your school counselor to see what scholarships the high school has. Look in your town. Does the Lions Club in your town offer a scholarship? Look to employers, as I mentioned. So do that kind of exploration. And then also maybe use one of these online scholarship tools. I mentioned a few here: mefapathway.org, fastweb.com, bigfuture.org is the College Board site that does that, where you can put in information about yourself, your grades, your interests, and receive a list of possible scholarships you could apply to outside of the financial aid process. So that's another task that a student can take on. And then you can just see at the bottom that $175.1 billion was awarded to students in the academic year 2021. So there is a lot of money for college. And then let's talk a little bit more about those federal student loans that we already mentioned. Why are they considered financial aid? Well, a few things. Let's look at these bullets. The student is the sole borrower, and there's no credit check done. So these loans are given to students just on the basics that they're going to be going to college, graduating, and hopefully getting a job and hopefully repaying. So they are awarded to students alone and with no credit check. Some of this loan could be subsidized, meaning that the federal government pays the interest while the student is in school. And then some of it could be unsubsidized, meaning that the interest does begin to accrue on these loans. But either way, the student does not have to repay these loans until after graduation. Currently, the interest rate on these loans is 4.99%, and that's fixed for the life of the loan. Whatever the interest rate is when the student signs that promissory note, that stays that way for the life of the loan. And you can also see the amounts that students can take in these loans each year. Freshman year, $5,500, sophomore year, $6,500, and then junior and senior years, $7,500 each. So what that means is if a student takes all of the federal direct student loans they're eligible for, they graduate with about $27,000 in debt. And that translates into about a $300 payment per month if they pay it back on the regular 10-year repayment plan. But there are lots of choices for other repayment plans. So if a student isn't able to pay back on that regular plan, they can choose another plan. And many of the plans are what we call income-based, income-driven repayment plans, meaning that your payment per month is capped at a percentage of your income, allowing students a much smaller payment. And these loans also have some deferment, forbearance, and forgiveness opportunities as well. So that is the federal student loans. And just so you know, most students will see that a college will award that as part of a financial aid package. So then colleges give financial aid really for two reasons, and sometimes they're merged together. And one is based on merit. So if a student has great grades and a profile that puts them in the top of the admissions pool at a certain college in a certain year, then they can receive merit-based aid, which is grants and scholarships awarded because the college wants to attract them to that college. Each year, colleges want to attract the best class, And by best class, I mean academically, but I mean diverse, geographically, ethnically, based on major, all of that. And so they use merit-based money to do that. So one myth is that people think you have to be the valedictorian to receive a merit-based award or something like that. And that's not true. It just means that your profile as a student puts you high in the admissions pool, again, at a certain college in a certain year. Maybe it could be the whole top half of the admissions pool can receive some merit-based aid. So that's different from college to college, but there is merit-based aid out there. And although sports or an artistic talent can be the reason you receive merit-based aid, actually academics is the first one. Your grades is the first reason that most students receive merit-based aid. And then other financial aid is awarded based on financial need. And that is based on the information that you as a student and a family complete on the financial aid forms. All right, so now we'll talk about the application process. So what's the timeline? When do you apply for financial aid? Well, you should apply for financial aid in fall of senior year of high school. I mean, you could apply in the winter or spring of senior year, but let's talk about that. Every college will have admissions deadlines, and they also have financial aid deadlines. And they can all be different at different colleges. So you want to make sure that you apply for financial aid based on the earliest deadline of all of the colleges that you're applying to. So one way to do that is to look on the college websites of the colleges you're applying to and look at the deadlines and make sure you apply by the earliest. But I think an easier way is just to apply as early as possible in the fall. So the financial aid forms open up on October 1st. And so if, as a student, as a family, you just put that in your calendar that in October, we're going to apply for financial aid, you will be ahead of all of the deadlines, because the earliest deadline that I know of usually is November 1st. So just get these forms done early. And as you'll see, as we talk about them, that shouldn't be a problem. And you'll feel so good when you have it done. So what are the forms? The first is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. All colleges require this form, and you go to FAFSA.gov, and that's where you start this form. One thing you need before you start the FAFSA is an FSA ID. That's a federal student aid ID. And really, that's just a username and a password. And you need it for the student and one parent. So you can go into FSAID.ed.gov anytime, create a username and a password, write it down, put it in your phone, put it somewhere safe and secure, because you can keep that FSA ID forever. And that's helpful for you, the student, and also helpful for the parents, because parents, you can use that same FSA ID when you're applying for financial aid with other children as well. So get an FSA ID. And then when you want to start the FAFSA, you go to FAFSA.gov and you begin to complete the FAFSA. Just a couple of things to think about. You want to make sure you are applying in the correct year. So think about it this way. If you're going to apply for financial aid in October and you're hoping to start the following year. So right now, it's 2022 and they're applying for 23-24 academic year. Then you want to make sure you're completing the 23-24 FAFSA. And when you go to put in your information, when you go to put in income information, there's a great tool within the FAFSA called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. And you can press a button and pull your tax information from the previous year, already completed, and bring that into the form. And that saves a lot of time and makes the form a lot shorter to complete. And one other note is that you do need to complete the FAFSA every year that you're in college. So what's reported on the FAFSA? general information about student citizenship status. So that's important. The colleges that you're applying to, you want to put those colleges on the form. Information about parents and marital status. So you'll put that. And then information about the number in your household and the number in college. Now, one thing, if students' parents are married, then both parents' information goes on the form, the FAFSA. If students' parents are divorced or separated, then just one parent, the student's custodial parent, which this year, the definition of that is the one that the student lived with more in the past calendar year. That's the parent that completes the FAFSA. If that parent is married, it's that parent and spouse that complete the FAFSA. And then again, I mentioned you'll put financial information for both parent and student, both income and assets. And you can use that IRS data retrieval tool to pull in that income information. And you'll put taxed and untaxed income on the form. Parent and student assets that are collected on the FAFSA are savings, checking, investments, and other property, all 529 accounts as a parent asset. But the assets that are not asked about are your primary home, the value of your retirement assets, life insurance, or the value of a small family business under 100 employees. And also, there's no real way to put debt on this form, but we'll talk about how to add special circumstances. So then some colleges require an additional form besides the FAFSA. So you should look at the colleges that you're applying to and go to the website and see what forms are required. And if they require, they'll definitely require the FAFSA, and they may require the CSS profile, a form of the College Board as well. And if so, you need to complete this form. So you do that at cssprofile.org. And there can be a fee for this form, $25 to send it to one school and $16 to send it to each additional school. But if your family earns $100,000 or less, then the form will be free. This also becomes available October 1st. And a few of the things that are collected on this form that are different from the FAFSA are, they do collect information about your primary residence, what your home is worth, what's owed on it. They may collect information about a family business. And also, if parents are divorced or separated, they may ask that other parent to complete a CSS profile as well. Although there is always a process to waive that if that other parent is in the picture. Lastly, sometimes a college may not require the CSS profile, but they might have their own form. And if so, you need to complete that as well. And then after you apply, the colleges that you've put on the forms will receive your data electronically. And then you will receive back via email a student aid report, which just lists all the information that you put on the form and tells you that it's been successfully submitted to the colleges that you listed on the form. So you'll receive that. From the CSS profile, you receive an acknowledgement that is similar, that shows you what you've done. Then there is a process called verification. So the colleges will start to look at your forms, and I'll go to this next page, and they may have questions, or they may need you to verify some income. Maybe the CSS profile form needs you to send your tax returns. So just pay attention even after you submit the forms. Open your email, read everything that the colleges send you in case they ask you for follow-up information. And don't worry about it. That is just part of the process, but stay on top of that. And then that leads me to talk a little bit about the financial aid offices at colleges. They really can be a great resource for you. So here are some reasons you might contact the financial aid office early on. You may have questions to ask them about their financial aid, and to ask, if I receive financial aid, is it for 1 year or can I count on it for 4 years? You may want to ask, if you have a private scholarship that you're bringing in from your high school, for example, how will that affect my financial aid? And in 2024-25, there are going to be some additional FAFSA changes. So at some point, you might want to ask them about how that could affect your financial aid. And also, if you complete these forms and you feel like you're not telling your full story there because it just doesn't give you a place to do that, you can always email the financial aid offices to give them more information about yourself. Or if you file the form and then something changes, you can always contact the financial aid office to let them know about any changes. And when you receive your award, if it's not quite enough money for you to be able to attend, you can always contact the colleges to talk with them about that and see if there's any other information that you could share to be able to receive any more funding. So find out from the college how they like to be contacted. Is it a phone call? Is it email? Do they offer a chat? And don't be shy about contacting the financial aid offices. Now, I mentioned that there are going to be some FAFSA changes next year in 24-25. So I'll just quickly talk about what they are. And there's a lot to still be worked out here, but there is many good changes, actually. It's going to be a shorter form with fewer questions. So that's good. Some things will change names. So right now, when you complete the FAFSA, it comes up with a number for you called your expected family contribution. And that's the number that you're expected to pay toward educational costs before financial aid kicks in to help. That's going to be called a student aid index next year. Also, with divorced and separated parents, the parent who will need to complete the form in the future is not the one that the student lived with more in the last calendar year, but actually the parent who provides more support. So that will be a change that will happen in the future. But there are going to be some types of untaxed income that will no longer be counted. So that's good, like child support. Another one that's great is that any resources from grandparent 529 plans will no longer be counted. So again, those are questions that if you're applying for financial aid this year and you receive an award, you could ask the financial aid office if your award will stay the same in the future or if any of these changes will affect it. And you can also stay connected to some of these changes by signing up for MEFA emails, because we will keep you posted on all of these changes. All right. So now let's talk about how these decisions are made at the college level. So when a college is thinking about awarding financial aid to all of its students, the first thing they have to know is, what is the cost of attendance? How much does it cost a student to be here as a student for the year? And that includes tuition and fees, possibly room and board, books, supplies, transportation, personal expenses. So that's why when you see these high costs of a full cost of attendance, is because it includes everything it takes for a student to be a student on campus or off campus, but for the year. And you can see that this cost of attendance includes some billed costs, some costs that will be billed to you up front, and some other costs that will the student will encounter during the year. And so I mentioned that expected family contribution. After you complete the financial aid forms, you will see a number on the FAFSA acknowledgement that comes back to you, the student aid report, that will be your expected family contribution. And that's the amount that it's expected that your family can absorb in college costs before financial aid kicks in to help. So it's not really a number that you might agree with, but it's a number that based on the numbers on the FAFSA, and compared to all of the families applying for financial aid, a number that it's felt you can absorb. If you want to find out what that number could be for yourself, you could always use something called an EFC calculator, and we have one on the MEFA website. So then the formula to award financial aid becomes this: the cost of attendance at a college minus your family's expected family contribution equals your financial aid eligibility. So if a college costs $50,000 and your family's expected family contribution is $10,000, then your financial aid eligibility can be $40,000. And that's what a college then works to give you a financial aid award to meet or get as close to that financial aid eligibility as they can. So let me just show you a little example of how a financial aid administrator might make an award for a student. So this student, let's see, has an EFC of $5,000, and the cost of attendance at this college is $45,000. So the financial aid person is going to try to make an award that will make sure that student has $45,000 to attend the college. So the first thing they'll do is say, well, the family can pay $5,000 according to the FAFSA. And then maybe they'll give a grant and a scholarship, and that grant could be need-based, the scholarship could be merit-based. And then they're going to give the student loan for a freshman, $5,500. And then they're going to give a work study award so the student could work. And with this college, that's all they're going to give, because they are a college that can't promise to meet the full need of every student. So they're leaving a little bit unmet. So in this case, then your family would need to come up with the expected family contribution and that unmet need to make sure that your student can attend this college. There are some colleges that promise to meet the 100% of full need for all students. And if they do that, they will tell you that right on the front of their financial aid page on their website, because that's really great if they're able to do that. So some can do that, but many colleges can't quite promise that. So they do their best to meet as much of the need as they can. And this is another tool you can look at. Every college has something called a net price calculator on their website, and you can find it. You can just type net price calculator in the search bar, go in, complete some information as you will on a financial aid form, and it will give you an estimate of a financial aid offer you might be able to receive at that college. I wouldn't use these calculators to make any hard and fast decisions, but hopefully that just gives you some information. So if you're playing around with these calculators as you're applying to college, and you see that you have a number of colleges you're applying to that don't seem to be able to meet full need, you might want to add a couple of other colleges on your list, maybe one that's closer by that you could commute to, or one that gives more financial aid, just so that you have a really balanced list and a lot of options and choices when it comes time to making a decision of what college to attend. And this slide just shows that when it comes time to receiving your financial aid offers from colleges, you will find that they will look very different from college to college. So here's a family with that $5,000 expected family contribution and cost of attendance of $45,000 at all of these colleges, just for an example. So a financial aid eligibility of $40,000. And yet you'll see colleges A, B, and C offer very different financial aid offers. So college A is one of those that meets full need. So they have offered financial aid that totals $40,000. And college B, while offering a good financial aid package, has left some unmet need, and college C has left even more unmet need. So you might find this when you start receiving financial aid offers. And this is a time when students and parents really need to sit down and think about, even if college C is my first choice, could I look further into college A, which is awarded more money, and will I be able to get the same education? Do they have a good program? I really liked college A too. Cost-wise, this might make sense. That's when you start to have those conversations. It's also when you might go back to a college like college C to say, this is my first choice, but I feel that it may not be affordable. Is there anything else that we could share? And, is there any other source of funding that could help? So this is a common occurrence at family kitchen tables once the awards start arriving. And this slide just shows also that it is very important to pay attention to the different parts of the award offer. So if you quickly glance at these 3 college awards, it looks like they all awarded the student $35,000. But if you look closer, that's not true. And you'll see one college did not award work study and the others did. And 2 colleges offered something called a parent loan, which is not really financial aid. It's just telling you that you have an option to borrow a parent loan if you want to meet that cost. But it's really important to be comparing apples to apples. And you may end up taking a parent loan, but you want to compare the apples to apples of these financial aid offers up front before you decide how you're going to meet the cost. All right, so we'll move into this last part, which is sort of taking you through the timeline. And let's say that parent and students, you've talked it all through and you've come up with a college and decided where the student will attend. But there is a balance due. You've looked at the cost of attendance, you've looked at the financial aid that has been offered, and there's a balance due of about $20,000 that you'll have to come up with as a family. So how do you handle that? Every family will handle that a little bit differently, but and one family might say that's too much. No, we can't do this. Let's go back and look at the other offers and let's find a more affordable option. But if you think you could handle it, then you'd figure out how are we going to pay that. So I'm just going to share an example of how one family might come up with that $20,000 to pay that balance due. So the student might have some savings. Maybe they worked a summer job the prior summer, and they can pay about $1,000 toward that cost. And the parents might have some savings, maybe a 529 plan, and they decide to use $4,000 of that. And then out of current income, all colleges have something called a monthly payment plan, which isn't a loan. It's just a way that you can break up the cost of education over the course of the year. So this family might say, all right, we're going to pay a little bit out of current income. We just paid off an automobile in our family, let's say. So now we have $500 extra a month. So for 10 months, that would be $5,000. We're going to do that. We're going to pay $500 out of current income to the college for 10 months. And that would be on that monthly payment plan. And then this family might say, we need to borrow an additional education loan of $10,000 to meet that cost. So that's how one family might decide to come up with that $20,000. But there are some things to think about in these situations. And here are the things that people should think about. So that $20,000 is not for 1 year. It's probably going to be for the next 4 years. So a family needs to think about, is that affordable? Would the students starting at a community college save significant money? And yes, the answer is yes, it would. So that might be an option to take a look at, to go to a community college for 2 years, get a lot of those credits, and then transfer it to the 4-year college. Parents probably need to consider the number of children you'll be sending to college. And so trying to pull together that $20,000 per year for this student? Is that going to leave you short for others? And students, you also probably want to think about that loan payment for yourself in the future when you graduate. If you just take those federal direct loans, maybe you'll be able to handle that payment, but maybe you don't want to take on any additional loan debt, any additional part of that education loan, especially if you have an idea of what your career is and maybe right away you won't be earning enough money to pay a significant debt, or maybe you don't know what you're doing, and so you don't want to take that chance either. Maybe you want to go to graduate school, so you don't want to take on too much debt as an undergrad. Conversely, though, let's say you are applying to an engineering program, you get accepted, and you're going to go to an engineering program that puts out all kinds of statistics about when students graduate from that college. They graduate with an average starting salary of $80,000. There are some engineering programs who share data like that. And if that's the case, and you know you're a hard worker, and you might decide, all right, I feel I can take on a little extra debt. Nothing's guaranteed, but I feel like I can, because I know I'm going to work hard and I'm going to do well at college. And I'm willing, I'd like to go to this school, and I'm willing to take that chance. So that's a decision you might make as well. So 2 other websites you can look at, and that we always tell families to spend some time on these websites. These are 2 ways you can save money. So the first is Mass Transfer, and that is the website for the public system in Massachusetts, where you can start at a community college and then transfer to a 4-year public institution in Massachusetts. And there are lots and lots of ways to save money by doing that. There's automatic credit transfer. In some cases, there's automatic admission. There's tuition credits, freezes on tuition. So look at that website and see all of the ways that you can keep costs down through Mass Transfer. And the other is through the New England Board of Higher Education. And so, Jonathan, I don't know if you even want to say a few words about this, but the tuition break program is a great way that students can save money attending certain programs in public institutions in other New England states. And do you want to say a few words about that, Jonathan?
I certainly can, as it is,
Yeah.
as it is my job. Thanks for tagging me in here. Absolutely. So yes, tuition break, which is part of the reason we're gathering here tonight, is really a fantastic opportunity that's available just to New England residents to really support you in saving money. Now, specifically, as Julie noted, tuition break applies to students who want to study outside of their home state. So whether you're a Massachusetts resident on here tonight, or you're perhaps a New Hampshire resident looking to study somewhere else in New England, but outside of New Hampshire, this is an opportunity that really could make sense for you. So the way that tuition break works is that it is strictly a tuition discount for students who are studying at an out-of-state public institution. Now, the great thing about tuition break is that we are all over New England. We actually work with every single one of the public community colleges and 4-year universities in the region. And the region, as we define it, are the states of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And so we're really proud to be at every institution. And I will say that the discount at some institutions, it may depend on the academic program you study. However, at many institutions as well, the discount is offered very widely, perhaps even to all students across New England as well. So there's a lot more information on our website. I will also drop our contact information, the tuition break team's contact information into the chat as well. So please feel free to reach out. Thanks, Julie.
That's great. Thank you. And so then I'll just share a couple of other free resources for you. Some of our partners in Massachusetts. FAFSA Day at fafsaday.org is I guess I won't call it an organization. It's a collaboration of financial aid experts around the state from many of the colleges and universities in Massachusetts, and many of the organizations like MEFA who work in financial aid, where they have events where students can go and complete the FAFSA. Right now, the events are online on Zoom, but a student can show up to a Zoom event, get paired with an expert, and complete the FAFSA by sharing screens right online. It's great. So go to fafsaday.org to find out when the next events are coming up. And then another great organization, or many organizations, but are the educational opportunity centers. And they offer free financial aid help, both online and in person. And massedco.org is one that we deal with. And I know that they have a branch in the Boston Public Library where they're starting to have in-person one-on-one appointments as well. So there are those places to get some help as well. And then here is a timeline of staying on track with this process. So some of the things you'll do spring and summer of junior year, as far as the admissions process, researching colleges and visiting colleges, and possibly taking a standardized test and beginning to write your essay. And then into the fall, where you will be finalizing your admissions application, and then doing what you're doing right now, learning about financial aid on a webinar. And you'll continue to submit admissions applications, your financial aid applications. You can apply for private scholarships. And then in spring, that's when you really want to be comparing those award offers so that you can make a really good decision and probably choose where you're going to go by May 1st. So here are some things you can do now. And I think we can open it up for any questions before we head off for the evening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we currently do have one live question in the Q&A. So that would be a good one to start with, but I do want to take this opportunity to let all of our attendees know, feel free to drop any questions you have in that Q&A. We've got this one, and I've got a couple that I would like to ask on behalf of everyone, Julie, as well. But the first one is, does the cost of attendance include housing and meals typically?
And the answer is yes. So yes, colleges know that the cost of college is more than that tuition and fees, that whether a student lives on campus or off campus, there is a cost for living and for eating, and even some other expenses like transportation and books, and any sometimes a student might have labs that cost money, or certain equipment in a certain program. So all of that can be part of the cost of attendance, and therefore all of that financial aid can be awarded to cover up to all of that.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. While we're waiting for other questions to populate the Q&A, just a couple quick ones I have, really, and it's about really coming from an advice sort of standpoint. And so, of course, now there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of commentary out there about student loans in the world. For students or parents who express some anxiety related to just the student loan process, so what is some advice from you for them on how to really think about this at a high level, and what things really should they consider before they ever get to the point of signing on for loans?
Yeah, that's great. And you're so right. It's in the news because right now there's this question of, will students be able to have their past loans forgiven and all of that. So I guess, since we don't know any of the answers there and don't have a crystal ball, I'll move us a little bit forward. And let's say these new students now who will be possibly taking on a student loan for college. What you can expect in the future with that is that one really good thing is, I mentioned that there are very flexible repayment plans. And so the best loan that you can take would be that federal direct student loan, because of those flexible repayment plans, which allows a student to tailor their monthly repayment amount to what they can afford. Maybe they can take all the loans and afford that $300 payment a month, but maybe they can't because their initial job, doesn't pay enough to do that, or they need to move somewhere, or they need a car for transportation or something like that. But the good news is we're moving into more flexibility with those income-based repayment plans for the future. So that makes me feel like those loans can be well managed by students. And it depends. I don't want to say that everyone will be fine. Everyone should try to take the minimum debt that they have to. But if they need to take all of that, they should just understand early on, what exactly am I borrowing? What does this mean for a monthly payment? What are my options? And understand that when they're taking the loan early on, so that when they graduate, there are no surprises. So that's one thing. But I'll also mention that sometimes even that isn't enough to attend certain colleges, and students take on additional debt. And I think what I'd say is that students themselves, if they're planning to take that debt on by themselves, they should be very cautious about that, because that's where they get into a possibility of over borrowing and borrowing amounts that they might be challenged to repay. So once a student is complete with the federal borrowing, really then I think it becomes a family discussion. And can the students and parents maybe take on a loan together, and the parent co-sign, and could be a possibility. But if it's all going to be left to the student, I think the student should maybe look at the other options that they have in the other colleges they've been admitted to.
That's really fair, and I appreciate that, especially with the very circumstantial context that you gave there. This is a hyper personal process, and so every single student situation will be different, and so I appreciate you acknowledging that. We do have another question that's come in that appears to be pretty specific, related to the FAFSA. And it appears to be, I use the IRS data import tool, but I'm still being asked how much parent one earned in 2021.
Yes. Yeah, that's so great, because it's so funny. I get that question all the time, and the folks at MEFA receive it all the time. Yes. And that's just because of the financial aid formula and the questions, and they just want to see what is earnings versus other type of income. And so that doesn't mean the tool didn't work. The tool worked, they have your taxes, but they just want that number separated out for the financial aid formula. So you can feel confident it worked, and everyone gets asked that question of what are your earnings from work.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for confirming that. And then it looks like another one, again, regarding the FAFSA, I read that they look at bank accounts of both parents and the student. Should I reduce these balances and pay off debt so that it looks better to the FAFSA formula?
Yeah, another great question. So one thing I'll share is that the financial aid formula that gives you that expected family contribution is very much income driven. So just important to know, assets are included in the formula, but it's really an income driven formula, and that's what makes that number seem so large in most cases. Your assets are treated at a very specific rate, and I'll give you what that is. Parent assets are treated at 5.6%. Student assets are treated at 35%. I want to make sure I have that right. I'm sorry, excuse me, 20%. I don't know why I said that. 20%. Student assets are treated at 20%, and parent assets are treated at 5.6%. So it does mean that money that's in the parent's name is treated a little more leniently. which is good. And 529 plans do fall into that category as a parent asset. And basically what that means is if you have $10,000 of assets, that increases the amount of your expected family contribution by $560 a year. Or if you have $100,000 in assets, that increases how much you're expected to pay by $5,600 a year. So relatively small compared to the amount of assets that you have there. So yes, reducing the assets in those accounts does reduce what your expected family contribution is, but in general, usually doesn't make much of a difference at all in the aid that you'll receive.
That's an excellent response, Julie, and really appreciate the specificity there, especially regarding the percentage weights. That's critical information that's certainly not well known. So really appreciate that, both for myself and on behalf of our audience. As I want to bring us to a close here tonight, but before I do, really the last thing, Julie, any advice, one last parting word of wisdom for students watching, parents, family members watching, some final thoughts for this.
Sure. I would just say that I understand both from doing work in this area for so many years, and I sent my own 2 kids to college, just how much is going on in the family, for high school juniors and seniors, and how overwhelming it all is. And then adding this financial piece, which, is scary. College costs a lot of money. All of that produces a lot of anxiety, and there's so many questions. So I would just say to folks, everyone feels the way you, everyone feels this little bit of anxiousness about the process, but just know there is a lot of free help. You can ask questions, you should ask questions, get answers. And I think that the trick, if there is one, is to start this process early and just sort of task yourself with getting it done and getting it done early, so that you're not doing it at the last minute, which is just going to produce more, more stress. Just get on it and try to plan to do this financial aid process in October of a student's senior year. And if you're just doing it now, do it now, and that's fine as well.
Fabulous advice. Excellent parting words of wisdom. I will only add to that. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Never think that you're wasting the time of somebody like myself or like Julie or anyone at MEFA or a similar organization across New England. Every one of our 6 states has an organization like MEFA. So don't hesitate to reach out to these folks. They're filled with wonderful people who want to help to make this process easier for you. So please don't ever hesitate to ask questions. But at this point, I will bring us to a close, and I want to say a major thank you to my good friend and colleague, Julie, for all of her wisdom this evening. A major thank you to MEFA as well for their support of our college opportunity and exploration platform, which you all came here tonight through. Whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching this at some point in the future, I'm really grateful for MEFA's support there. I will say, just as a parting note regarding tuition break, if you have specific questions about the program, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. A ton of relevant information about the program, of course, exists on our website, and I'm happy to speak with anyone who has questions. So once again, thank you everyone for your time, and I wish you all the best of luck in the college search.
Thank you.